This is round 2 in room 2. The motion is, this House would make passing a current affairs test a prerequisite for voting in the general elections. My name is Katrina and I am Prime Minister. The average voter does not take into account how their votes affect citizens that belong in other international countries that affect them greatly. We think that we must do all that we can to ensure that people make a fully informed decisions and to understand the impacts of the decision that they make and how it affects people outside of their country. Our model is quite simple, but it's 6-pronged. The first of which, we think that each registered voter must go through this test. We think that it would be held maybe 3 weeks or a month before the general elections. We will use the registry that used to register voters before they start voting to see who needs to undergo this test. There are 2 types of people that will not be allowed to vote. People who fail, who do not take the test, and secondly, people who fail the test. The 4th thing is that we would ensure that the information about current affairs would be spread out as much as possible. In fact, we might even hold classes for people to take it. The 5th thing I'd like to say that even, let's say, under extraordinary circumstances in which someone fails by a single mark, or that someone did not have access to the same kind of information, we think that's when we would still allow them to vote. The 6th thing I'd like to say is that this test would be very objective, and it will be about current affairs as to major conflicts around the world, very brief knowledge of politics within certain areas, and sort of major occurrences that happen in different countries and what happens in those areas. We think that this test would be organized and prepared by a international body that is apolitical to make sure that the objectivity of it remains intact. There are 2 arguments in my speech today. Number 1, why is the status of current voters right now is not in a good position to vote? But secondly, how does this help politics sort of globally? But before that, yeah.
Would you publish the results to be publicly shown?
No, we will not. We will not. I think we can just allow people, we can just tell people that they're not allowed to vote simply because they will not fail. First argument, why are current voters not in a good position to vote? There are 3 things to things. The first thing I'd like to say is that voters are easily swayed by very vague, heroic political agendas and slogans. In current status quo, people vote based on very vague promises that seem appealing to their opinion. Words like "Make America Great Again." The charisma and planned out speeches made by expertise often are able to lure in voters that do not have full access to information with promises that end up not being fulfilled. I think in that regard, they're very coerced into these things, especially when they do not have the same kind of information. Take a seat. The second thing I'd like to say is that people do not realize the impact of their decision as a result of their lack of knowledge. When a person votes, more often than not, they do not know the full impact on how this affects other international countries and how their local country plays within these international waters. Take a seat by this. We think, what do I mean? We think, especially in countries such as the US, where they play a huge international role, people are told that they should not allow immigrants in because they're taking over their jobs. But they do so without knowing the conditions of Mexico and how people are murdered in the streets and people literally cannot get jobs within that country, or how the conflict within Syria is one that's really bad, and more often than not, people are forced to move into these countries illegally because the alternative is death. The third thing, so as a result, I think people do not realize the impact of it in international waters and why, and whatnot. The third thing I'd like to say is that politics in general is adversarial. Politicians have incentives to spread false information and control media and news agencies in order for them to pass their political agendas. What do I mean by this? So Donald Trump uses the narrative that Syrians and other immigrants are people that take their jobs and are terrorists and will harm their country, but do not take into account how their country right now is being harmed even greater, and there's literally no alternatives for these groups of people. And the second thing is how in Turkey, how Erdogan paints US as a bad ally, and that they become very anti-Western. As a result of that, more often than not, voters make a decision and choose to vote for policies and laws that harm that has a greater harm to citizens within international countries without realizing the impact of that. We think as a result, that people do not realize the harm of their decision. Therefore, we think that we should give information to them in order for them to do so. The second argument is that how will politics in general become a lot better? The first thing I like to say is that it is more likely that an individual would choose a president or a leader that creates good international policies. They would do so thinking that now that they have they're more likely to have full information because they have incentive to pass the test and they have incentive to make sure they'll be able to vote. That's when they're more likely to read up on current affairs. So they're more likely to keep in track because they do not know what this test would test on. As a result of that, we think that in general the country becomes one more that's more internationally aware, and from the more information, we think you get better decisions. We think that even if they still fail, even if they do not vote for a leader that's not generally internationally friendly, we think that it's a still more informed decision and one made with more information that they have already processed, and therefore we think that that decision made is still one that is more valid in absence of that information. But secondly, we think that discourse and discussions are more likely to happen if people have more access to current affairs and they have incentives to make sure that they always keep up with current affairs, right? Because right now we think conversations are very shallow. People use excuses like they're just terrorists, or that people do not, or they're just terrorists, or we shouldn't send men to these countries because we're losing money from military. We think these are things. This is where the conversation cuts short. We think if people are more incentivized to look for information, then it's a lot easier to enter discussions that are probably more comprehensive, or one that is more inclusive of what is actually going on in the world. That's when people are more likely to form better decisions and better opinions of it. But the third thing, I think this is very important, we think politicians right now are less able to spread fake news or be adversarial or to control state-run agencies in order to paint people who are against them as one that is people against their agenda as one that's particularly bad. That means Trump cannot just say that immigrants are taking over their jobs. If people know that they literally have no other alternatives, and more often than not, they come into these countries using low-level jobs. We think this is when Trump is less likely to be able to paint different people to paint these areas, to paint immigrants as in a very bad light. But secondly, they're more likely to make sure that their policies that affect international waters are more likely to be good and comprehensive. Because if they know that people now know the current situation and the danger of which citizens face in international countries, that's when they're more able to criticize a politician when they make a policy that is bad or does more harm or kills people more than it does good. As a result of that, politicians, in order to get a popular vote that now takes into account current affairs, that's when they're more incentivized to make sure that their policy is good one. I have never been more proud to propose. Yo. It's low.
Did you stop the video?
I don't know whether it's stopped.
Did you stop it?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Felice, can I borrow your pen?
No, you didn't stop it.
I didn't stop this. I didn't stop this.
You didn't stop it, yeah.
Can I
Should
borrow
I
your
stop
pen?
it?
No, we wanted to do cut the video, right?
This one.
Actually, no, you should,
No,
right?
no.
Okay.
Can I
Just
borrow
hope it
your pen?
works. Yeah.
That's a nice dress. Can I borrow your timer? Oh, my phone just died.
Can I borrow a timer? David, can I borrow a timer? The barrier of a current affairs test is principally undemocratic and limits access. We think that they hurt the most vulnerable. We are okay with several things. The first is that current systems of democracy is what we stand for, and this is the current system that provides access to anyone that is a citizen of age, and we are okay with that. We think that we would actively encourage all people to vote and provide as much information as possible to optimize these decision-making choices. We don't think that's mutually exclusive to their side. In principle, access is fundamental to democracy, and any attempt to restrict that access any more than status quo is actively harmful to the most vulnerable. I'll prove to you two things. The first is how the principle of full representation is imperative, and secondly, how society will become a lot more resentful, or at the very least, less participatory in your democratic processes as a result of this. But I have one clash before I integrate the rest of my responses into my arguments. This clash is that whether or not the quality of choice is a lot better on their side, because the goal that comes from their side is that the choice is important in A, impacting others, and B, like using the full amount of facts. But first, on the metric on whether or not it impacts others in like other countries, right? The first thing we will say is that it's an actor debate whenever you're voting, right? This means that whatever impacts you the most, or even whatever you feel impacts you the most, is something that is legitimate in your vote, and you should not like limit that access just because you didn't care as much for someone else on the other side of the world, right? I think that while there's a value to like caring, it's not fully altruistic when you vote, and that we shouldn't limit access to that. But secondly, on whether or not it sways the emotion, there's more sway of emotional promises in our world, because that's the second metric that came about, that people only care about emotions but not about like actual information. The first thing I would say is that emotions are legitimate and that like actively determine your view of whether or not you are represented. This means that like whenever you feel for something, that's already you feeling that your interests are being put there. This doesn't change in their side, because these feelings are still necessarily impact these individuals, just that in their world, people feel these things but have no access to actually representing those feelings. But the second thing is that, like, even if it means that like people use emotional promises and charisma a lot less when they are politicians, they will change. This is just a tool by which they gain more voters. In their world, they would change this tool to something a lot more malicious. This means that if people are already currently willing to like propose false news in the same way that Donald Trump does, it's going to be more subversive and more harmful in your side, because they will actively, also like governments that are already in power but want to stay in power will actively use like lobby groups, will actively use like fund research that helps their side, and you would not be able to determine which one is fact and which one is false, right? This means that the access to truth in their world is a lot less because of this new tool that people will use as a means of manipulating voters. But here's where I bring to you two arguments, and the rest of my responses will be integrated in this. The first is the idea that there is a principle of full representation. This is because in a society that has consented to your democratic process, it is a full spectrum of people. There is no one bulk of people that is more valuable than the other, and that each individual consented to your rule, and the risk of to your rule, and the risk of possibly being less represented, but still having some representation to begin with, right? If they all agree to this, you like tarnishing that democratic process and locking them out of the democratic process is one that does not represent the full spectrum of individuals, right? This means that you're literally undemocratic, and all these individuals are locked out of your democracy. Before I move on to my next argument on how individuals become a lot more resentful and less participatory to your democratic processes, closing.
How will you empower minorities in your side to care more about turning out to vote if they don't already have the information that allows them to do this?
Yeah, it's not our burden to like increase the amount of minority voters, Dave. Instead, we said it's more harmful to on your side to these minority voters. And why do we say that? This is my argument. I have three levels of analysis to this. The first is the people who are minorities or are poor, right? These are people who have been historically disadvantaged and already started on a back foot, right? These are individuals who are more likely to have to work extra hours, to work two jobs. You're a single mother who has no access to updated information, or literally too tired to read up on the information. But what you still maintain is your emotions and your direct impact towards you, right? These are individuals who are most likely to have the other priorities and are willing to trade off access to information or current affairs. These are individuals that are most likely to not pass your test, or at least perceive themselves of being incapable of passing their test. Because like a lot of minorities also don't have the confidence to believe that they are as like capable as a white individual, right? These are individuals that you actively lock out in terms of their interests and voice, right? The comparative is that if they actively vote, even if they vote based on their feelings, that's an interest that is represented in our democracy, whereas in yours, these minorities would not be able to pass your test. The second thing I would say is that the very rich and corporate individuals are the ones who are most likely to pass your test and even go for your test to begin with, right? These are individuals who have the privilege of educating themselves from a very young age, as well as ensuring that their future generations are also educated. privileged compared to someone who was historically disadvantaged. These are individuals with extra classes, with private schools, with degrees. These are individuals who also come from ivory towers that can never represent the full spectrum of society, right? These are individuals that are oftentimes cushions from other sectors of society, and these are the ones that will overwhelm the voting bloc, right? This means that even if some minority, even if there is a chunk of minority voters that pass your test, this particular group would be the most overwhelming and harmful to your minorities, right? The last one are people who are individuals who believe that they have the right to vote but are disallowed from voting, right? So that they end up at that test, failing that test unbeknownst to them, but feeling that there's anger as a result of being locked out of this. And the first thing I would say is that it's a legitimate form of anger to be turned away by a society that deems to govern you. We think that these are individuals who are most likely to harm your democratic processes, not in voting because they literally can't vote anymore, but rather in things like riots and things like harming other minorities or things like not complying with your laws, right? These are individuals who are least likely to accept things like gay marriage, things like abortion laws, things that you think are valuable to minorities. These are individuals who feel that minorities have overtaken their power and overtaken their voices. This means that they are more resentful and unlikely to comply to any forms of democracy that you propose to them, right? A democracy is one that must actively represent the interests of all individuals because it seeks to govern all these individuals. If you do not represent them, then you cannot claim to govern them.
Just move this before.
Just kneel.
I'm Mahdev, Deputy Prime Minister. Churchill once said that the government you vote in are the ones that you deserve. But at the ballot box, one makes the choice at the height of misinformation, and that choice, we think, is one that is highly manipulated and is a betrayal to the democratic process. The position we will take and reiterate in the side of government is that this test is a basic necessity to create the highest level of informed participation in a democratic election. I will provide two pieces of argumentation. Firstly, why this policy restores legitimacy in a vote, and secondly, why this policy renews a sense of activism amongst people to increase the level of accountability politicians will be held to. But before that, 2 points of responses. Firstly, should people care about others as a result when they turn out to vote? We say yes, because every time you go out to vote, it is one more vote into a politician whose policies will affect everyone, independent of whether they took part in that election or not. This means in our world, every white person now who may have voted on the sentiments of nationalism and on racist sentiments, we think at the moment, because of the level of education they're likely to opt into, that means being a lot more aware of the consequences of immigration policies, or being a lot more aware of the consequences of having mandatory healthcare. This means, at the very least on our side, more people will be considerate when they make their choices and not to just simply cast a vote that is blinded by the height of nationalism. We think that level of information means the votes that you create will, as a result, drive politicians to create policies that help other people. So we don't think one vote just serves yourself, rather it serves everyone else because of the person who you vote into power. But secondly, will this lock out more minorities? We disagree. Why? Because our policy specifically states that it will be one that it creates the highest amount of access for people. This means that you will be able to have test centers in many different areas like the inner cities. It means that people are oftentimes locked out from participating in elections because they are affected by their jobs or because they are affected by long hours. Then we don't see why we can't make the election day one of a national holiday. We don't see why you can have one day a month for everyone to opt into going for these classes so that they can benefit from the result of the education for this. We look at the type of classes that you're likely to have, also ones that can be run by citizen groups or groups that you form on your own to help people educate themselves. So the level of information you are likely to obtain on your side means that creates a stake for you to realize that because of this information, I am now more aware of the people that are running in an election, and as a result, they are more likely to step in to vote in an election. Because understand, the white corporate people, according to Felice in her world, will always have that level of information and level of education.
Yeah.
The question then is, how do we empower people that have been historically locked out of an election system? This means minorities that have not had that same level of access to education. That's why this policy specifically targets to create the highest level of access for them. We think as a result, this what you're likely to do is create a larger amount of turnout to the elections. If you do fail an election, then we do fail a test, then we think that signifies you not deserving to vote in the election because you're likely to vote on the same arbitrary nationalistic sentiments or sentiments that in effect will affect other people. We don't think that is one that you should be held to. Into argumentation. Why does this policy restore legitimacy in vote? The first thing we need to understand is how has votes lost its legitimacy? When you look at legitimacy, we define this as people being able to understand who they are voting for based on the level of information that they have. Because currently politicians come in and campaign based on identity politics, the message will be constantly perpetuated by smear campaigns or by grand rhetorics that cloak away actual problems. That means you allow people like Donald Trump to come in and say, we will drain the swamp away. You allow Narendra Modi to come in and say that we will serve everyone and we'll clean out India, but that doesn't actually carry any water. When this person is actually voted into power, does that vote actually count to anything when these people backtrack on the promises that they make? What is two outcomes to this? We think the first outcome is a lot of people feel locked out as a result of not being able to relate to that same level of rhetoric that these individuals have. That's why we think more minorities in status quo are less likely to opt into wanting to even vote because they realize that any type of rhetoric that's being offered into them does not serve to cater them at all. That's why we think when you have that information, what is likely to change is that firstly, the level of information that you access will mean that you not only read more articles, but you also engage in going to town halls and questioning individuals. The reason why this is likely to happen is because the information you have and you access empowers you to question people or politicians when they make contradictory statements online. So when you now go to the town hall and question that politician, you feel like you have a stake in ensuring that the politician you vote in is also one that you can account for. But secondly, it increases the level of participation you have pre-election and also election. We think this is an important principle in a democratic system. What does this look like? Because we think as a result of our policy, when more people are able to attend classes and understand the kinds of issues that affect them, this means they're likely to step in and join rallies and collect more donations and ensure that the individuals who are debating on the issues that they care for are actually individuals who have evidence to be able to back the things that they say. Because at the height of misinformation and fake news now, more politicians get to run away with just using rhetoric but not being able to evidence the information that they have. The conclusion to this argumentation is that now when people turn up to the election, to the ballot box and vote, the information that they have means that they will be able to delineate between politicians who are only there for the charisma and rhetoric and politicians who are there for the information that they use in creating policies that are well-reasoned and well-evidenced. I'll take a POI now.
If politicians are so hateful and smearing, and they know that you are locking out their main voter base, what's the likelihood of them not smearing your political tests?
We think what changes directly on our side is a dynamic that shifts away from identity politics and one that is based more closely towards the policies and the stances that you take. This explanation will come in my second argument. Now, the first question we need to ask is, how are politicians less accountable now in two situations? The stances that they take and the policies that they create. We think the stances that they take and they will continue to take in the world of opposition is one where the power of rhetoric will always be the saving grace on their side. That means when they go to a town hall meeting, they can say, this land is ours and we should be able to evacuate and not allow immigrants to come into our borders. And understand that when they say these things, these are oftentimes not backed up by any forms of evidence, but people are more likely to be manipulated and persuaded by these things because they take it that just because this person is one of a position of power, they know what is best. We think we change that dynamic when people now understand that when that politician does not actually have any truth behind the statement that they say, it's easier to call out a politician at the same town hall meetings and say, this is not exactly what you stand for. We think that calling out culture means now you force politicians to take a proper position on the stances that you take. But secondly, it also means that you create policies that aren't smearing or aren't entirely persecutory over certain types of groups, because the people that now understand and read your policies will be able to stand up and not vote for you at the election box if you only depend on rhetorics.
Is it recording?
Yep. Yes. I'm David. I'm Deputy Leader of Opposition. The existence of a fair test as a prerequisite for voting in general election turns off people incentive to vote. Here's how I'm going to structure my speech. First, I'm going to tell you my argument and explain what is the nature of general election itself and why do people actually turn off to vote to begin with. And before moving on to deal with Dave's argument and then deal with Katrina's argument. Here's my argument, right? We have to understand the nature of general election to begin with. We have to understand why do people vote, right? Either one, to choose for the next leaders for the country or for better politics and condition of the country, or the third, either they want to benefit themselves, doesn't necessarily want to benefit other if it actually disadvantage that particular people, right? And second thing that we have to understand why people actually are disincentivized to vote, right? Either candidates are super bad and unable to choose for the leaders because like there are no alternative for them to choose, because maybe like Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are just horrible, so I will choose not to vote for them, right? This means that these people who still vote are fallible. Having a fair test makes it much harder for them to vote. Number one, people tend to be lazy when the process of election itself to be more complicated because they have never been incentivized to join the test or whatsoever, because they'll choose not to vote to begin with, right? It means that on side government, they'll be more likely to have less people to vote on their side, right? And the second thing is that they voted because they don't want to be shamed by the society for not voting, right? As a result of you disincentivizing people to vote, more people in your world will choose not to vote because there's no incentive. And the second scenario is that side government's model can only stand if they show, so like we have to understand that people are disincentivized to vote when the candidate, the person is choosing is being shown in public. This means that people will know, I think side government's model can only stand if they show the result publicly, right? This means that you will know who actually voted and who actually not. This means that on side opposition and inside government, the people who failed the test itself is going to be shamed on their world, right? Rather than knowing that they vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, they'll choose not to vote because the tension of each supporters will be tightened inside government. So I think that on side government, the only way for them to achieve the benefit itself, they have to show the result on side government and the result of the test itself, and I think it's still harmful, right? Now, how I'm going to deal with this argument, right? This argument is firstly that people should take into account on how other people will be impacted, which is the same argument as Katrina, right? Number one, who are you to decide who people want to choose, right? If I'm gay, but the politicians have a policy to benefit LGBT community, but trade off but also in the same time wanted to increase taxes, I'll choose the politician who actually benefit me because I'm gay, right? And in the other hand, I will not choose a politician who is homophobic, right? This means that on your side, when you actually say that, these people is going to impact the most poor people, that's the reason why these people will not be benefited at all. Yours a fair test itself is the coercion for the most minority people on your side, right? The poor people, the LGBT people who actually wanted the gay marriages, for example, right? Now are coerced to support the people on the ground because they're poor or whatsoever and not being able to pay these taxes, for example, right? That's the harm that they never want to understand. And then the next thing that the Dave told you is that, the model is that classes can help the people itself. What the hell is this classes? I don't know how it looks like itself. I assume the classes is likely to have power imbalance itself, right? Like we have to understand why do people actually voted for Donald Trump, even though they know that Donald Trump is going to harm the Muslims in those particular country. These people still choose for Donald Trump itself. So this means that the people who chooses for these people are genuinely racist and choose to trade off the people on the ground. It means that they're going to benefit them more. Your argument doesn't necessarily stand and the test itself doesn't prove that it will actually change people and how it will impact other people, right? So their argument doesn't stand at all. Dealing with Katrina now, but before that, sure.
People who really want to vote for themselves can still do so. But why would you not allow to give information to a moderate who does not know the impact of their decision and may change the decision after they feel the impact?
Okay, so what? So I don't know why the moderate will really understand, right? Because right now, if I'm a moderate, right now I have either two choices. I'll save the gay people or I'll save the poor people, right? Right now, if I'm a moderate liberal, so I don't know either way, right? So I don't think that the test itself will benefit either. I don't think it will actually give more better information whatsoever. Your argument is neutral. It's not mutually exclusive. I'm going to tell you why, Katrina. Number one, so it's the same argument. So I think like it's untrue that people voted for Donald Trump without knowing it harms other people, because like people, even though they know as a result of choosing Donald Trump, they know that Muslim won't get into the US and will be harmed as a result, right? This proves two things. Number one, the act of voting for Trump is the genuine racism, not necessarily because they're not informed. And secondly, I don't think Kat has proven to you on why by having the test itself, suddenly they'll be able to choose for Hillary Clinton, right? Because if it's internal racism, it doesn't take into account why they still want the harm to the minority, right? So it's not mutually exclusive. Our side will still have the information, right? And the second thing is that people will vote for you because it will hurt somebody else, right? They'll choose the politician that can benefit them the most. Unlikely for people in government to change their mind because it doesn't benefit them, right? And the last argument that Katrina told you is about discourse, because they said that more people will discuss about the candidates because there will be a phase to this. Number one, I think maybe I think discourse will happen on side government. I concede to that. But I don't know if the discourse itself will be meaningful. Maybe it's true that the discourse will occur, but I don't think they'll talk about the correct things, right? For example, poor people who can't access for the information are unlikely to pass the policy because they can't benefit for them, right? Because they don't have the access for that particular information. Even though they want to talk that, we'll have a holiday for that or whatsoever. I don't know how you will reach these particular people. I don't think it's being explained in their argument, right? So the candidates that will win will be voted from the majority itself. This means that the minority, rights that they actually wanted, for example, the right to have doesn't have a wage gap between men and women, for example, right? This means that if side government which is more racist, then the majority itself is going to win on their side, right? This means that the minority will be less likely to win the policy that side government wanted to push to you, right? I think that the policy will only benefit one party, and even if it is true that even if it's true that it's a trade-off either one or another, it means that on their side they'll still lose the other thing that they want to trade off. On our side will still also happen. This means that the argument that side government want to tell you is not mutually exclusive. One or another will be harmed. I think side government benefit the majority more without really taking into account the minority that actually that hasn't never been able to have the access on side opposition. I think government has lost this debate. For all those reasons, I'm very proud to this.
Still recording, huh? Yeah. Is it? All right.
My name is Theeraa. I'm the member of government and I'm the last speaker. When you vote in an election, you don't only affect those of your country, but you also affect the lives of many other people surrounding you. I only have one argument in this debate, and that's why allowing only well-informed people to vote will create a better future for those who are affected. But before, I only have one rebuttal. My only rebuttal is that side opposition came out to say that only the privileged people would pass this test because the privileged people, they only pass this due to upbringing, they only pass this because they are given the opportunity to have these classes, to be more informed, to be more educated. However, from the beginning, the Prime Minister already said that we will have classes for these minorities. We will have classes for these people to understand what's going on with the world, to understand the current affairs that's going on. So I don't understand how that stands in your side. So moving on to my only argument on why allowing only well-informed people would better impact and would create better change in society. Sit down. So now currently in status quo that only everyone is eligible to vote. Only once the moment you pass a certain age, you become eligible to vote, regardless on how much you know or how knowledgeable you are on the current affairs that's going on. And why is this a problem? This is a problem because now people are now blindly voting for all these evil politicians who are trying to push through all these horrible ideas, because now these people, like the minorities, are so vulnerable. They aren't aware how probably voting for somebody who's really evil, who's probably pushing all these ideas that's going to affect them in the long run. These minorities who are uneducated, who are poor, who don't have the knowledge to understand that how they voting for the wrong person is going to impact them in the long run. So because they are so easily manipulated, they are so vulnerable because they have no idea. But with the implementation of this motion, you would then educate more people. You have more politicians will be now questioned, because now more people are well informed. More people are have the knowledge to know what's going on. So now if a politician tells like 100 lies, not everyone's going to believe them, because now there's more people who will be questioning the politician. This politician will be now put under a spotlight, because now more people are educated and more people are well informed. They'll be able to make better decisions. They'll be able to question the things that are going on with them. So the moment people start questioning what's going on, and the moment people start questioning these lies that these politicians are going to try to paint onto them, the politicians are now forced to only make, or to only say the right things, to only make better choices, to make only better policies to help and benefit the people around them, and not just benefit the rich and neglect the poor. But before I move on, I'll take a few on.
It sounds like all your information helps you make better choices for someone else, but not yourself. Tell me how the information helps you in your best interest.
The moment you gain this information, you would then be able to analyze the situation as a whole. You'll be able to make better decisions, not only for yourself, but also decisions that would benefit the rest. So I don't understand what you're trying to say there. Because now that people are more well informed, how are they? They are less likely to make bad decisions that would not only affect themselves, but in fact affect the country and everyone else as a whole. So now people will be more informed. Politicians will be more put under the spotlight, and this would then lead to change. Because the moment that you start questioning things, the moment you start raising your voices, the moment you start raising more or new ideas, you then increase further discussions about these policies that these politicians are trying to put forward, which should then lead to more change. So now, these things that these minorities probably hoped and dreamed for would then become a reality, because now they have the power, they have the voice, they have the knowledge to then question every single thing that these people are putting forward, and then they'll be able to make better decisions. In government, well, you will have more informed people. You will have people who you will have increased change. You will have policies that will benefit people as a whole, not just the white privileged people. You also benefit the minorities and the poor. But in opposition world, you have less uninformed people. You have more people making blind decisions. You would have more people that aren't questioning these politicians, and more vulnerable people who will just accept whatever these politicians tell them to, will accept whatever these lies the politicians tell them, because you think that's the right thing, because you're uninformed. So with all that, I'm proud to propose.